I've been a financial advisor now for over 20 years, and I'm very fortunate. I've worked with hundreds of millionaires. But this channel is about you, and how do I help you achieve your financial goals and prepare for retirement? So in today's video, I want to talk about how you can save your first $100 million. As the title says, it's simple, but it sure ain't easy. So let's jump in. I want to start off with how big of a problem this is in the United States. If you look at this chart by the Wall Street Journal, this shows how much money Americans have saved in retirement accounts. And it shows about half of all Americans have $0 saved for retirement. And I shouldn't chuckle, that's not funny at all. And almost 80% have less than $100,000 saved. And that is a scary situation. I don't want that to be your situation. I want you to be at the other end of the curve here, the 500,000 to $1 million, which only 4% of Americans have. The $1 million to $5 million is really the sweet spot. And you can see the 500,000 plus is less than 8% of all Americans. I want you to be in the top 8%. Okay, so how do we do this? I think it's a fair criticism to say, hey, Azul, those are retirement accounts. How about those of us that have money in our home or bank accounts that aren't retirement accounts? Okay, that's fair. So let's look at this table that comes from the Federal Reserve's Survey Consumer Finance. Now, this is the most recent data we have. It was just published in October of 2023. This survey of consumer finance, that report comes out every 3 years. And so it'll be 3 years until we have data as accurate as this. So this is household net worth. This is not individual net worth. So if you have a life partner, if you're married, this is going to include your spouse and or your life partner. If you're single, it includes just you. But people less than 35 years old is $39,000. From 35 to 44, it's under 150,000. From 45 to 54, it's a little less than 250,000. 55 to 64, you can see we're starting to approach that $500,000 mark that I think is the bare minimum for most people to think about retiring. It's not financial advice. It's just what I've seen. Some people are willing to pull the trigger when they have a $500,000 net worth. So 55 to 64, you can see the median, and the median is half have done better, half have done worse. It's a little less than $365,000. 65 to 74, you can see when people first start retiring, their net worth actually goes up, and that passes my sniff test. That's what I see. Little over $400,000, and then 75 plus, it starts going down. Okay, but let's get into the crux. How do you start saving $1 million? So let's look at what this road looks like for you. So this chart here is assuming that somebody saves $10,000 a year, and they get a 7% return on that money each and every year. Not how the stock market works. Some years you get more, some years you get less. And 7% is a pretty healthy return. A lot of people will say, well, hey, Azul, the stock market does 8 or 9%. Well, if your money's invested in mutual funds or you're using a financial advisor, there's fees associated with that. So this 7% is the 7% that your account actually sees. Okay. So how long is saving $10,000 a year? How many years does it take to save your first $100,000? You can see it. It takes a while. It takes about 8 years. And that's why there's a famous quote by Charlie Munger. And Charlie was Warren Buffett's business partner. He just passed away recently. Rest in peace, Charlie. I had a chance to meet Charlie when I was in business school. Just a delightful gentleman, very giving. And he also had a lot of quotes that would catch people's attention. So one of them is, you have to do whatever you have to do to save that first $100,000. You can read the quote. But anyways, it takes about 8 years to save that first $100,000. Now, why does Charlie say it's important to do whatever you have to do to save that first $100,000? Because after that, it gets a lot easier. Look how long it takes to get to your second $200,000, second $100,000, which takes you to $200,000. That only takes you 5 years. And I like this chart because it shows you what you have to do. So 100,000 to 200,000. Now we're 13 years in. That's a long time, and that's saving $10,000. Later, I'm going to show what happens if you save more money, but let's keep going through this chart. I want to point your attention now to the bottom of the chart, which shows you how much of that incremental $100,000 in each of these periods, how much is that is coming from money that you've put in versus your money working hard for you, the money that you put in previously, right? We work hard for our money, and I want you to think about making your money work hard for you. And one of the things this shows is it's not enough to save. You also have to invest. And if you don't invest, you're going to lose ground to inflation every year. And I'll show that later, but you can just do the math. For somebody that went 8 years saving, they'd only have $80,000. Instead, they have $100,000. Okay, so at the bottom, it shows you from the savings was about 80% from the returns on that first $100,000, that first 7.8 years. Only 22% of that came from the returns. But as we go from $100,000 to $200,000, you can see that's 5 more years. And now it's about half and half. So very quickly, it changes where your money's almost working harder for you than you are for yourself. From $200,000 to $300,000, the good news is now your previous money is doing 60% of the heavy lifting, and you're doing about 40% of the heavy lifting. And now that only takes you a little under 4 years. From $300,000 to $400,000 takes right at 3 years instead of 8 years for your first $100,000. And during those 3 years, 70% of the heavy lifting is being done by your investments, and only 30% is being done by you. Let's keep going. From $400,000 to $500,000, you can see that only takes 2.5 years. And now 3/4 of the work is being done by your money working hard for you, and 25% is you putting money in. From $500,000 to $600,000, now we've got kind of the exact opposite of the first $100,000. Instead of 80% of the money being money that you put in this case, it's almost 80% is by your money working hard for you, and 21% is new money. And look at how long it takes to save that extra $100,000 between $500,000 and $600,000. It takes a little over 2 years. So you can see the secret here. Let's keep going. Now we're at $600,000 to $700,000. Takes less than 2 years. 80% of the work's being done from you, your money that's been working hard for you. $700,000 to $800,000 takes less than 2 years again. 1 2/3 years. So what would that be? 1 year and 8 months, if I'm doing my math in my head correctly. So that's not bad. And then $800,000 to $900,000 takes 1.5 years, and 85% of the money is coming from your existing foundation. So as people build up their net worth, you can see why later in life people say, oh, it's easy to save money. Oh, it's easy to hit your financial goals. It is if you have a base of $800,000 working for you. And that's where I want to get you to as soon as possible. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. Let's keep going. So we talked about $800,000 to $900,000. That takes 1.5 years, 18 months. For the final one, $900,000 to $1 million, takes a little over a year. It takes 1 year, 4 months, and a couple days. So think about that. It took you almost 8 years for the first 100,000. And that last 100,000, 900,000 to $1 million, takes 1 year, 4 months, and a couple days. Now that feels very, very doable, doesn't it? So how do we get you there? Okay, I built an Excel spreadsheet to look through that. First, the Excel spreadsheet that I'm starting with here with $10,000 of savings per year and a 7% net return. That's the exact same numbers that were used to build the table ahead. So we should see it takes about 8 years to reach the first $100,000. And you can see after 8 years, which is a little more than the 7.81 that was in the previous chart, we have $102,600. The other thing is I want you to look at year 2. Year 2, we have the first $10,000 that we put in, plus we saved the second $10,000, but we earned interest, we earned a return, we earned a return on our investment for that first $10,000, and that was 7%. So that was $700. So you can see our money worked hard for us, but only produced $700. And if we go to year 5, now 5 times 10,000 is 50,000. So now our money has produced $7,500. And if we go to year 8, we've put in $80,000, right? 8 years times 10,000 a year. So our money has produced $202,600 for us. So that's how this works. Now, The question is, how do you get there sooner? Because if we keep going down, you can see, after 10 years, we've only got $138,000. After 20 years, we've got $400,000. And if we go back to that chart that I showed earlier that shows the net worth for people, right? Let's say somebody really starts saving for retirement when they're 30 years old. Well, if they've started at 30, look at this chart, 35 to 44. If they've been saving $10,000 a year, this is saying they have about $135,000. So how does that compare to our chart here at 10 years? Ta-da! It's $138,000, right? So you can see how this all matches up. So the question is really, we have two ways to get to our retirement goal sooner. And a real common question would be, hey, Azul, what if I can save more? What if I can save $20,000 a year instead of just $10,000? Does that get me where I need to go sooner? And let's do the math on that. So again, with this Excel spreadsheet that I built, all I have to do is change that $10,000 to $20,000. And let's see where we're at. How long does it take to get to $1 million? What? We only get there between year 22 and 23? Yeah, unfortunately, that's how the math works. I want you to be thinking about the way to get to $1 million, the simple way to get to $1 million, which is the title. I said it's simple, but it ain't easy, and you'll see here why that is. The simple way is to get to that first $100,000 as soon as possible. Let's go back to that quote from Charlie Munger. And you can see how wise Charlie is here. It really is about getting that first 100,000. Then you can ease off the gas a little bit, but keep saving and you'll be fine. But if you want to be able to reach your goal in 20 years and get to $1 million, you almost get there. Let's say you save $20,000 a year. At the end of 20 years, you're at $800,000. And that's great. That's going to put you, we talked earlier, let's go back to that chart with the Wall Street Journal. $800,000, puts you in the top, certainly the top 8% of all Americans. So that's good. But I think most of us are going to want more than that in retirement. I don't want to make a judgment call, but if you want more, and that's really what this video is about, is how to earn your first 100,000. I want to go back before we leave these Excel spreadsheets. Again, let's go back to saving $20,000 a year. How long does it take you to get to $1 million? About 23 years. And if we save, let's go to the $10,000, saving $10,000 a year chart. If we do that, it's going to take us, 31 years to get there. So what do you do if you want to get there sooner? How do you do that? And before I switch over, let me show you the formula that I use. You can do this at home yourself. It's if you have Excel, and I'm sure Google Sheets does this as well. Just use a formula called future value. I share that so you can build this yourself. Or if you sign up for my newsletter, which you can find in the show links, there'll be a confirmation email that gets sent in. If you just reply to that and say Excel spreadsheet, I'd be happy to send this over to you. Again, it's not financial advice, and I can't warranty that it's free from errors, but I've double and triple checked it, and it agrees with the other chart that we use. So I'm pretty sure it's working. So how long did it take me to build that Excel spreadsheet? Less than 15 minutes, right? This is what I've been doing for a living for a long, long time. And it talks about the value of working with a river guide, right? You have your skill set. You've worked your life in your profession, and you're much better at your profession than I'll ever be. And financial advisors, good ones that are fiduciaries to you 100% of the time, they've worked hard on their profession as well. And importantly, it's not that non-fiduciaries haven't worked hard on their profession. They have. And there's some great financial advisors that are not fiduciary to their clients 100% of the time. But the question is, how do you know if they're bringing their smarts to your benefit or to the firm's benefit? That's why I say, for me personally, I want somebody that's a fiduciary to me 100% of the time. Now, if I knew without a shadow of a doubt that somebody that wasn't a fiduciary to me 100% of the time was still keeping my interests in mind 100% of the time and was solely focused on helping me reach my goals, you know what? God bless. I'd be happy to use somebody that's not a fiduciary 100% of the time. But the challenge is I don't know. And so I'd rather work with somebody that's committed legally, legally committed to being a fiduciary, and they're held to that standard. So that's one thing. How do you get there? Is you work with a river guide, preferably a family financial advisor, somebody that's fiduciary to you 100% of the time. But, working with a financial advisor is not the right answer for everybody. So, what do you do? And it's also about balancing, right? I mean, could you save half of your income? You could, but, the journey's not going to be a whole lot of fun. So what do you do if you're in this situation? I'm not a fan of FIRE, the financially independent retire early. That's really about retiring like at 30. And the reason I'm not a fan of it is just I think you have to give up your 20s in order to do that. And I don't know about you, but I had a lot of fun in my 20s. And I didn't always make the right financial decision. But I look back and I'm glad I did the things that I did. I had a lot of fun. I took a lot of trips. I hung out with a lot of people. One of my hobbies is hang gliding. Took 3 months after I graduated college and went hang gliding around the United States. And that was a great, great adventure. And a lot of potential employees weren't happy that I said, I'm not starting work until after Labor Day, right? They wanted me to start work in the middle of June. But I had worked really, really hard in my case for 5 years because I did something called co-oping. So I worked a semester, I went to school a semester. I worked a semester, I went to school a semester. And also thanking the U.S. Army, I was on an ROTC scholarship in the early years of that as well. And because of that, I had some work experience, and I also knew I wanted to take some time off before I jumped back in. And I share all of this just to say, I want you to have balance. So how do you get this balance? Okay, let's quickly talk about this. I call it the 50-30-20 rule. And that is the goal, if you can. I think in today's world, we have to, unfortunately, strive to save 20%. And I know it's not easy to do that. And there's two ways to get to this 50-30-20 rule, the easy way and the hard way. Let's do the hard way first. And first, let me explain what the 50-30-20 rule is. That says that the goal is to budget 50% or less of your take-home pay for your needs, things like your rent, your utility bill, gas for your car payment, right? You're driving back and forth to work, you need a car. So those are your needs. Think how we lived during the pandemic. And then the second part of that is your wants. And your wants are things like going out to eat, going on vacation, buying a new car every 3 years instead of every 10 years, things like that. Those are wants. And we try to keep our wants to 30%. If we do that, we have 20% left over to save. And the hard way to do that is to live like you did early in the pandemic, just cut out everything. And the easy way to do this is every time you get a raise, every time you get a promotion at work, congratulations. And I want you to enjoy the fruits of that labor. I don't want you to save it all, but I want you to enjoy half of the fruits of that labor. So half of the promotion, half of the raise goes to current you in your current spending, and the other half goes to future you. So let's say you're saving 7% now. Well, you get a $3,000 raise at the end of the year. Well, half of that goes to current you, half to future year. Next year, you get a promotion. You get a $10,000 a year raise. $5,000 goes to current you. $5,000 goes to future you. And I think you'll appreciate your future self will appreciate your current self for making that sacrifice. Again, it's not all about sacrifices, which is what this video up here is 7 things I want you to stop doing in your 50s in order to enjoy the journey towards retirement, whether you retire at 52, 62, or 72. So I'll see you in that video. Bye-bye.